good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on which time zone you are in. Yeah, thank you for all your attendance for your participation to this young researchers forum on detonation, from fundamentals to applications. So today's talk is going to be given by Mr. Peswani. He's a PhD student right now at Case Western Reserve University, and his PhD supervisor is Professor Brian Maxwell. And his current research involves developing modeling strategies for reactive flows generated from shocks and detonations. And the current work is dedicated towards developing a better understanding of DDTs and other unsteady detonation phenomena through effective turbulent combustion models. And I think now is the point for me to hand this forum to Mr. Peswani, and if he's ready, he can start his sharing the screen, and please go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm just gonna share my screen. Hello, hi. My presentation today is titled "Performance of a Four-Step Combustion Model with Equilibrium Effects for DDT Investigations." So I'm just going to start with a very brief introduction. So typically upon the initiation of a flame, combustion occurs via deflagration, which represents the subsonic mode of combustion, with chemical reactions occurring at nearly constant pressures. However, under certain conditions, such as like interaction with obstacles, as shown in the figure above, the flame can accelerate and transition to a detonation. And this process collectively is known as deflagration to detonation transition, or DDT, which is what we're very interested in studying. So the onset of detonation itself, shown in the figure below, is a local phenomenon. But however, in the case of DDTs, the thermodynamic state has been conditioned by this flame acceleration process, which occurs over a much longer length and time scales. In this scenario, then, the flame acceleration process becomes as important as the onset of detonation itself. So this makes the DDT problem turbulent, it's highly reactive and compressible. And this, coupled with the wide range of length and time scales, makes it very challenging to model. So then, to address the turbulent nature of the problem, there have been there's a lot of work recently using DNS to simulate DDTs, which is solving the complete Navier-Stokes equation. Unfortunately, like the simulations shown here for DDT in a channel and here through a series of obstacles, the simulations have been limited to sub-millimeter or microscale ranges due to the high computational cost required to capture DDT, like the turbulence at a molecular level. Additionally, because these simulations are limited to these very small domains, experimental validation has not been achieved. Additionally, DNS simulations also typically rely on highly simplified chemistry models, since coupling them with the detailed chemistry mechanism just adds to the computational cost further. There have also been attempts made in the past to model DDTs using the reactive Euler equations. Now, the key features of these models is that they do not address turbulent mixing, which has been shown recently to play a role in the flame acceleration process. And they also neglect diffusion mathematically. So the flame then, in that case, propagates through adiabatic compression and numerical diffusion mechanisms alone. The figure here on the right shows the final stages of a DDT using the reactive Euler equations. Unfortunately, in the absence of turbulent mixing and diffusion effects, results from Euler models are highly sensitive to changes in resolution. So the model actually fails to capture the correct number of shock reflections for transition to detonation to occur. So to deal with the limitations of direct numerical simulations and Euler models, large eddy simulations are viewed as a reasonable compromise between accuracy and resolvability. So there have been a few different LES approaches attempted in the past, and their different domains of application are easy to understand on a turbulent intensity versus length scale Borghi diagram. So the well-stirred reactor corresponds to the broken reaction zones where turbulent intensities are much larger than the reaction rates. The opposite is true for the flamelet mechanism where reaction rates dominate the turbulent intensity. So they're kind of limited to these regions in the combustion regime. There's also been a hybrid model, which is essentially a combination of the well-stirred reactor and flamelet mechanisms. But as a result, the hybrid model does not treat combustion rates when turbulent mixing and reaction rates are comparable, which is in these thin reaction zones, which is actually where we expect a lot of this TDT phenomena to occur. So in comparison with experimental data, this has led to like under prediction of detonation events, initiation events when compared. There's also a flame thickening approach which has been investigated, which attempts to resolve the reaction rates and diffusion coefficients through scaling their magnitude artificially. However, this artificial scaling just compromises the compressibility and reaction rate sensitivities of the model, which are critical when predicting the onset of detonation events. More recently then, a Lineareddy model for large eddy simulations, which uses a grid within a grid approach, has been investigated for turbulence closure in TDT simulations. So past results using the LEM model have been very promising, with the results validated against experiments at a laboratory scale. Unlike the hybrid model shown before, the model is also applicable across all the combustion regimes, including the thin reaction zone, which is very promising. We currently do have a working LEM model, but in its current form, the chemistry is highly simplified to a one-step Arrhenius equation combustion system, which has been shown to have some limitations. Typical applications of a one-step model assume the gas to be calorically perfect, so heat capacities remain constant, which leads to incorrect post-combustion states. The one-step model cannot properly describe the heat released during combustion of reactive mixtures that exhibit any kind of chain branching effect, such as like acetylene or hydrogen, which influence the ignition delay significantly. Another drawback is that the detonation structure is modeled only using a single global activation energy, which alters the induction and reaction zone simultaneously. And this can lead to incorrect prediction for onset of detonation events, as well as an incorrect final detonation structure. So the figure over here shows a comparison, shows the results and the comparison between the one-step model and a full chemistry GRI 3.0 mechanism for the one-dimensional CND structure for temperature and pressure profiles. This is like best case scenario because this is for methane, which doesn't show any chain branching effects, but there are still some like significant deviations between the one-step model and the full chemistry, with the one-step model failing to capture the correct stiffness as well as the temperature and pressure in the reaction zone after interaction with the shock wave. So the bottom line then is how do we effectively like model a DDT then? So we have our Lineareddy model for the turbulence closure side of it, but we need something better than a one-step model which currently exists in the code. So detailed chemistry mechanisms aren't a possibility because they're very expensive in both computationally as well as in their memory requirements in two and 3 dimensions. And also like there have been like 2-step and 3-steps approaches attempted, which don't seem to cut it. So the objective then is to identify and verify the performance of an accurate and computationally effective combustion model. So this combustion model then needs to be like just qualitatively and quantitatively comparable to a detailed chemistry mechanism in the reaction scales as well as overall thermodynamics, which will just help close the chemical response of the problem. And then this can finally be coupled with our Lineareddy model to investigate complex DDT scenarios. So the model proposed then is the 4-species, 4-step global reaction mechanism developed by Zhu in 2012. So the model is based on a thermochemical approach So it considers discrete chemical packets that mimic the behavior of a full chemistry mechanism. So since the equilibrium products for hydrocarbons are pretty common, the chemical packets are formulated using this equation set 1. And it can also account for fuel lean. And so it's like R is reactant, and P1 and P2 are the two product groups. And while this reaction set shows the different interactions that result from reactant R going to product groups 1 and 2, it's worth noting that the model also accounts for induction and chain branching effects to reactions I1 and I2, as well as a final equilibrium between the product groups through equation E. While all the Ki, and Kr and Kef are the reaction rate constants for these different reactions, which we'll get to in a second. So finally, there are 4 different global species that are considered. There's R0, which is essentially an unactivated reactant. There's R1, which is an activated reactant, which is how you account for the induction delay, as well as P1 and P2, which are the product groups. So the equation set that then needs to be solved for the one-dimensional CND detonation structure is shown here. So there's an equation each for density, particle path velocity, and pressure, as well as one reaction each for the 4 different global species that we consider. So it's worth noting that this set of equations is solved implicitly using the sundial CVODE solver in a C++ program. And it can also be easily adapted for constant volume and constant pressure processes. So at the heart of it, the 4-step model is a thermochemical approach. So that involves tuning these reaction rate constants that are seen through a curve fitting procedure of the real chemistry results, constant volume ignition process. So the figure here on the right shows the temperature profile along with the change in mole fractions for the different species for a typical constant volume ignition process. So, and how this is done is that the ignition process is essentially divided into 3 regimes. There is an induction regime, which is where R0 goes to R1. There's a main exothermic period where reactants go to products, as well as a final equilibrium phase between the 2 product groups. Oh, right. So yeah. So the idea, the main idea here is that after the main ignition process, there isn't any reactant R left. So you essentially divide the regime, and this is where we tune the reaction rate constants. And this is done using these equations here. So KEF is the forward reaction in the equilibrium zone, which is essentially related to KER to the equilibrium constant Kc. And once we have KEF modeled, just plug it into these equations for Kr1 and Kr2. Over here, the bracket P1 are the molar concentrations of these product species, while omega P1 is the local derivative with respect to time of the molar concentration. And this is just a sample of what the curve fitting procedure looks like. So it's fit to approximately 200 different constant volume ignition processes. And over a wide range of initial temperatures that essentially cover the entire spectrum of deflagrations and detonations. Right. So the images here show a comparison between the ignition delay predicted for the full chemistry using Cantera and the ignition delay for 4 different hydrocarbon mixtures using the 4-step model. So we have acetylene using the Konov mechanism. We have methane tuned using the GRI 3.0 mechanism, as well as propane, and ethylene finally tuned using the Wang mechanism. So overall, a very good agreement is seen for all the 4 mixtures over a wide range of initial temperatures and densities that cover the entire spectrum of combustion for both deflagrations and detonations. Next, the results presented here are a comparison of the temperature profiles for constant volume explosion processes using the 4-step model and detailed chemistry results using Cantera. So 3 different initial temperatures for 1500, 2000, and 2500 Kelvin are selected for a density of 10 kilograms per meter cube. So in general, like one can observe that the 4-step model does a really good job at replicating the time scales as well as the thermal states of the full chemistry results throughout the reaction. There are some deviations observed here in propane and ethylene in the final equilibrium region. So even though the ignition delay is captured to within the current the correct order of magnitude, the final reported equilibrium temperature is about like 5% lower in general than the full chemistry results. So we believe that this is due to like maybe some radicals that we're not accounting for in the equilibrium region for P1 and P2, which would lead to a incorrect final enthalpy and mean molecular weight, which would then explain the incorrect final equilibrium temperature. Lastly, like the 4-step model also cannot capture this slight endothermic behavior observed before ignition. It has no equation to account for that, which is worth noting. Right. So very similar results are then again seen for the temperature profiles for constant pressure explosion processes for the 4 hydrocarbon mixtures considered. So once again, a very good agreement between the timescales and thermodynamic states are observed between the results using the 4-step model and the full chemistry results using Cantera. So 3 separate simulations for initial temperatures are conducted for an initial pressure of 10 kilopascals. The temperature profiles for the constant volume process, again, are accurately predicted for the stoichiometric acetylene and methane combustion, with a deviation, again, of approximately 5% observed in the equilibrium region for propane and ethylene. The results are still very encouraging, considering that the 4-step model does significantly better than a simple 1 or 2-step combustion model when capturing the correct stiffness, chain branching effects, and overall temperature profiles. Next here are the results for the one-dimensional CND temperature profiles describing the steady envisaged structure of a reaction zone after a shock wave with speed equal to the CJ detonation speed. The results for the full chemistry are obtained using the shock and detonation libraries from Cantera with 3 different initial pressures tested for each of the hydrocarbon mixtures. The results are again very promising for all mixtures, with the results from the 4-step model and the full chemistry in accordance in both the spatial scales as well as the thermal states for the different test conditions. With the results, a significant improvement over the 1-step model presented before. There's definitely some deviations observed here for ethylene, and we believe that further calibration of these like model parameters to get better constant volume and constant pressure results should also generate better CND profiles that match the real chemistry a little better than they currently do. So then next, we also wanted to investigate the effect of adding a diluent and how the 4-step model reacts to combustion in the presence of a non-reactive diluent. So in this case, we have methane diluted with nitrogen, which is dilution of 25%. And the important thing to note here is that the model parameters here are not tuned again. Essentially, all I did was add an extra reaction for the diluent, which is just not changing at all, and that's pretty promising. So in that scenario, basically, you just use the stoichiometric equation and get all the model parameters, and then you can just add the required level of dilution, and it still does very well with the ignition delay predicted correctly, the constant volume and constant pressure profiles in accordance, as well as for the CND results. A very similar thing. Yeah, a very similar result is then seen for acetylene, which is diluted with 50% argon. Again, not recalibrating the model parameters, but essentially just adding an extra equation for the diluent. And again, like the ignition delay is great. The constant volume, constant pressure profiles are good, and as well as the CND profiles predicted correctly. And lastly, this is something I attempted very recently was to see how the 4-step model reactive cases of varying equivalence ratios. So over here we considered a lean acetylene combustion case with an equivalence ratio of 0.5, and this is done slightly differently, like just accounting for the non-reacting oxygen, like I did for the dilution case, didn't actually work. I had to recalibrate the model parameters the same way we did for the stoichiometric mixture for these lean cases. And overall is still good. Again, I was observing these deviations in the equilibrium region, but these are very new results. It's only been a week of me attempting to do these, so I'm still in the process of understanding it. But I thought it was worth showing that it can be used for these lean scenarios, which we would expect. So the conclusion is that the work presented here validates the performance of the four-step model through promising results for ignition time measurements, constant volume and constant pressure processes, and CND profiles. Another major advantage is that it's not limited to a single chemical mechanism, with a very good overall agreement observed for a wide range of combustion scenarios. We believe that the four-step model can be an effective and economic tool for providing more accurate chemical response closures when studying DDTs and other unsteady detonation phenomena. So the next steps then would be to build on this model a little further by first attempting to address the deviations observed in the equilibrium region for propane and ethylene before expanding it for more chemical mechanisms as well as more reactive hydrocarbon mixtures. It would also be of interest to validate the performance further for fuel-rich and fuel-lean situations, as well as varying the levels of dilution and making sure they all work fine. Our final goal then is to couple this model with our LEM model for large-scale numerical simulations that can be validated through experiments. Lastly, we would like to thank Dr. Yang and Dr. Zhu for their help towards understanding and developing the model, which is very helpful. And I would personally like to thank Dr. Maxwell for his guidance throughout the entire process. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Mohnish. This is very interesting talk. Please ask if you have questions. Please turn on your audio, and you can ask Mr. Peswani directly, or you can type your question in chat. Yeah, if there is no, actually, I have a question about your. So you for the calibration, like, is there any algorithm for you to fit the line? Because I think there are quite a few parameters you need to.
Yes. So let me actually go back.
Yeah.
So and this is one thing that I definitely should have mentioned, and I forgot to. So when this model was developed by Zhu, he tuned it for acetylene. So he has a detailed procedure on how he tuned the acetylene parameters. So over here, essentially, what we did was replicate his results, like, primarily to verify our own procedure, and then expand it for different hydrocarbon mixtures and fuel lean and dilution scenarios. So the procedure here, this is for some reason taking a second to render. So this is the part that was the most challenging. It's these reaction rate constants, because the model itself is very sensitive to these values. So which is why I consider, like, so many cases for constant volume processes. So they are essentially, so this is a pretty much just like an Arrhenius type of equation function that it's fit to for the KEF, while KR1 and KR2 are essentially a combination of two Arrhenius functions coupled with, like, a Boltzmann step function. So that's how these are fit. So so I use these equations to get the values from the constant volume process from the real chemistry, and then I use these functions to fit the data. And then I have these model constants that come from these fits from the function that I use by the four-step model itself.
Okay, I see. So eventually you actually keep a few of the constants just the same as what you got from literature, and you only tune those which are sensitive. Is that how you did?
No, so the literature it goes through like the different functions. So yeah,
Okay.
I have my own like code that kind of uses those same functions, but yeah, so my model parameters for acetylene are very close to what Dr. Zhu reports in his paper, but he only reports them for acetylene. And I did that like just to make sure what I'm doing is correct and in accordance with what he did. And then just use the same procedure for methane, propane, and ethylene, and just kind of expand on that model further, because he does it for acetylene and kind of stops there. So my idea was to do it for these extra mixtures, as well as see how well it does for cases with dilution and few lean situations and things like that, to kind of cover that entire area of study.
Okay. Okay. Thank
But
you.
yeah,
Thank
like
you
at the heart of it, it's still like a thermochemical approach. It uses the data from the real chemistry results, and essentially you just like go fit all of that data to develop these functions that are used by the 4-step model
right.
to replicate that behavior.
And also I have a question, like for DDT, I think the flame speed might be like a very essential criteria, right? Like,
yeah,
have you tried to
actually
validate?
what
Right.
we're currently doing. Yeah, that is immediate like next steps, which is to see how it does in like that deflagration, like flame acceleration scenario.
Okay.
And yeah, that is our immediate next work.
Okay. Okay, I see. Thank you. Thank you. There is a question actually from Professor Wenhu Han. Yeah, I'm going to read his question. He wrote the question in chat. This is interesting work. The 4-step model is nice for the steady detonation structure and can predict the ignition delay time and ZND solution, which are consistent with the detailed chemistry. However, do you make a comparison of the 4-step with the 1, 2, and 3-step models for the steady ZND structure?
Yeah, so I didn't compare it with the 2 and 3-step. I did compare it with the 1-step, and yeah, it definitely does a lot better. So I've done some kind of a little benchmarking, not too much of the computational efficiency as well as like, so it's definitely more accurate than a 1-step model, and definitely less computationally expensive than a full chemistry mechanism. But I haven't compared the CND structures for 2 and 3 steps. I'll definitely do that when I publish this work. I feel like that would be valuable.
Maybe I could chime in a little bit. So I certainly encourage my student Mohnish to do this for himself, so he can convince himself that the 1, 2, and 3-step don't cut it. But I have a lot of experience using the 1, 2, and 3-step earlier on in my career to try model detonations. And first of all, the 1-step model, maybe Mohnish, can you go back a couple slides?
Yes.
Slide 9. Yeah, right here. So you see here the comparison of a 1-step with detailed chemistry, and you can make this a little better by having variable heat capacities to try and capture better what happens behind the shock wave and after the reaction zone. But you have no independent control of the induction phase here. So if you look on the figure on the left, the temperature figure here, you see that as soon as the gas is shocked, it starts reacting. And so now your stiffness is not the same as it is with the detailed chemistry, and this can impact the evolution of a detonation wave. It's been shown that this ratio of reaction zone thickness to induction zone thickness is very important. So the 1-step model fails. Not only that, but there are no chain branching effects. So it's kind of tuned to a specific temperature and density. Then the 2-step model, we don't show it here. We can independently tune the reaction zone and induction zone so we can get the right stiffness. But it won't work for a whole range of temperature and pressures. There's no chain branching effects. And if you have a flame acceleration type of scenario, you can expect that your temperature and pressure are constantly changing, and you need to account for this. And finally, I've looked at the three-step model, and it can capture the chain branching effects. So you can do a whole range of temperature and pressure, but then you lose the stiffness control. So then you have no independent control of your induction and reaction zone thicknesses. So I hope that kind of at least makes it clear why we are going to the 4-step now. You know, we're starting simple and building up from there.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Professor. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for both of the answers. I have got another, I think it's very interesting question from Professor Tai Jin from Zhejiang University. So his comment is quite interesting work. Do the parameters of reaction rate vary from lean to rich mixtures or with different diluent?
Yeah, so I can answer that. So for diluent, no, they do not change, which is good. So for these, like I've explored different cases of dilution, and I use the same reaction rate parameters and model constants from the stoichiometric mixture, and essentially just add the initial amount of dilution and just add an extra reaction that says that nothing happens to that value. So no, they do not change for the dilution cases, but yes, they do change for the fuel lean scenarios shown here. So essentially, what happens is if I have a fuel lean scenario, all that extra oxygen gets accounted for in product groups 1 and 2. It's not like the diluent where the product groups itself do not change. It's like that extra oxygen goes into those product groups, and that changes a lot of the parameters. So for mixtures with varying equivalence ratios, I would have to retune it from the start. But no, I would not need to do that for cases of different dilution.
Okay, I see.
And maybe I can show the equation and that'll help.
Sure.
Yeah, so over here for a fuel lean scenario, so which is where if you solve these equations, all this extra oxygen is for a fuel lean scenario, and that gets accounted for in product groups 1 and 2. For the case of dilution, I just leave the product groups as is and just add an extra reaction which says that dilution, like it's non-reacting and nothing's happening. So I've explored dilution with nitrogen and argon for both the mixtures and varied them quite a bit. So I've gone up to like 60% dilution, and I don't need to like change anything as far as model parameters go. I hope that answers the question.
Okay.
May I have a question?
Yeah, sure, please.
Thank you very much. This is Zheng from Peking University in China. First, I have a question about your model on page 14. Can you move to?
Yes.
I don't understand the model because your model shows that the temperature will first decrease, and then if you look at the figure at the top right, there's a temperature decrease first, and
yes.
Also at the end there's also a temperature decrease. Can you explain the temperature decrease?
So this temperature decrease is actually from the detailed chemistry mechanism. So when I run the constant volume process for a GRI 3.0 mechanism, I actually see this is not behavior from my model, which is why I cannot. The red line is my model, which does not capture it. There's no equation in this induction period in the post-step model that can explain this.
But people usually trust the GI model. I think you are considering that the GI model is correct because your target is to try to repeat the result from GI, right?
Yes.
So I think the first stage decrease temperature because of decomposition meson or what? Can you explain the?
I guess some kind of like dissociation to some radicals that are actually endothermic in nature might see that. But yeah, I was surprised to see it, and there's no mechanism to explain that in my model or in Dr. Zhu's model. for that endothermic behavior.
Yeah, maybe your first model cannot include the dissociation process. That's maybe the reason.
Yes, yeah, there's no dissociation reaction.
Okay. Actually, my main question is why there is the second stage decrease in the temperature? You're considering constant pressure or constant volume ignition. What's the physical process of this model?
I'm sorry.
What do you mean by CPE?
Oh, yeah, CPE is like constant pressure. So yeah, this is a constant pressure ignition process, and this is constant volume.
Yeah, but I think for the constant pressure or constant volume, the temperature will be remain to be constant after the ignition process. But in your slide of 14, you can see that the second stage temperature decrease.
Oh, right, like here, like this.
Yeah. Why this temperature decrease? Is it persistent also?
No, it's like that equilibration, like that equilibrium of the different product species that actually tends to reduce. So it spikes to a maximum pressure, and then it actually equilibrates at a temperature that is lower than that maximum, which is like basically throughout. There are some that don't like show like this complete behavior like over here, but yeah, for a lot of them they kind of spike and then they equilibrate at a temperature that's lower than that T max temperature.
Okay.
And yeah. So
but
not always, but yeah.
But if you go to the next slide, the temperature decrease is too large, I think. Can you go to 14, number 14? Next slide.
Yes.
If you look at the top right figure, you can see the temperature decrease is about more than 1000 K. I think it's too large.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So we ran the detailed chemistry case using Cantera. So we just took the GRI mechanism and just did a constant pressure calculation, and this is what we got. And
it's kind of strange.
So the whole purpose here of our exercise is to tune this 4-step model to a detailed chemistry mechanism. And I guess whoever uses this ultimately should pick the right detailed chemistry mechanism and then tune the 4-step appropriately. So we're just kind of showing that if we take a detailed mechanism, we can do the whole range of temperatures and pressures, and we match things pretty good actually. So even though we don't get this endothermic behavior for propane for the one case, I think overall it responds very well to changes in temperature and pressure, and we get the correct stiffness, which is important. So beyond this, it'll be very interesting to see how this performs when done in a 2D or 3D simulation.
Okay. May I have another question?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, sure,
okay.
Sure, please.
So here you are considering that ignition delay time as a target when you compare your first-day chemistry and the detailed chemistry. I have a comment that maybe you also need to consider the excitation time. The excitation time basically quantifies the duration for the heat release rate. Heat release. I think that excitation time is pretty important for the DDT process. Just a comment.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
so
thank you.
We're working on that, but more in the framework of working out what the size of the reaction length is, which is the same thing. So it's been shown that for example, the reaction length to induction length ratio is very important for the detonation process. And this is more or less the same thing as the excitation time that you talked about. So we intend to maybe measure something, like the chi parameter, for example, for every mixture, and see how well that matches.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Chen.
Have you done that yet? Have you worked out any of these chi parameters or induction?
No, not yet, but yeah, I will probably have those results.
Okay, could I have a question?
Yeah, sure, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mohnish. Yeah, this is a very interesting talk. And the 4-step model seems could greatly capture the ignition delay and also the CND profile, which couldn't be done by the 3-step model. And I think it is promising. I have The first question is for your DND calculations. So you used for the constant specific His ratio or like to gamma, or very.
I'm sorry. Oh, I consider varying specific. Specific heats vary. Gamma is not constant.
Oh, not constant,
No.
Change with the temperature, yeah.
Yes. So I use the NASA polynomial functions. So the same Chemkin format for specific heats as well as enthalpy.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
and they are part of the parameter set.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how I saw your CND profiles in the end. Yeah, almost the same with the detailed chemistry. This couldn't be done by the 1-step or 2-step or 3-step model. And the other question is, I saw you did the exercise for the hydrocarbon. Could you my concern is how did you apply it to the hydrogen? Could we use it for hydrogen?
I attempted to do it for hydrogen, and no, it doesn't work very well for hydrogen, at least in its current form. Like the 4-step model doesn't do very well for hydrogen, and that's primarily because at high temperatures. So the assumption in the 4-step model is that after ignition there's no reactant left, and there's only product groups, and there's equilibration between those product groups. But in the case of hydrogen, like just because at high temperatures dissociation dominates the reaction, we end up with a lot of reactant again after ignition. And the post-step model can't account for that. So I did attempt to do it for hydrogen, and I was hoping it would work for hydrogen, but I don't think in its current form it works for hydrogen. Maybe with some edits to the equations or some PET explanation for the equilibrium region. But for hydrocarbons in general, like after that ignition period, there's no reactant left. It's only product groups that are left, and in its current equation, like set, the post-step model only has product groups 1 and 2 in the equilibrium region.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because
so actually, my whole motivation for pursuing this was to model hydrogen. Originally.
Hydrogen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have the whole motivation, and it doesn't work, unfortunately.
Okay. Yeah, because
well,
yeah,
maybe we'll figure it out in the future, but
yeah, because I'm also looking forward to like a reduced model for the hydrogen. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Very nice. Yeah.
Thank you for the question. Yeah, just a follow-up question to Professor Xiao's question. Just you said like you actually considered this NASA polynomial for your gamma for the ratio of specific heat capacities. Could you? I don't know if you have a slide. Could you show me like where does that actually go into the model? Because if you have this reduced in this reduced way, so you're actually tracking several. So the concentration of the different species
as the model develops and temperature varies. So at each step, it actually calculates what the specific heat of the mixture is, as well to get what. So based on that, it actually gives you the temperature and stuff like that. Yeah. So inside the code itself, so the NASA polynomials are part of like the parameter set, and for each as the heat increases and the temperature changes and pressure changes and things like that, it actually calculates the specific heat and enthalpy for each temperature as it goes along.
Okay. Yeah. So if my understanding is correct, so I think the advantage of this 4-step model is you're actually comparing to 2-step or 3-step. They're actually tracking the real species, right? Like they're not tracking some, say, like an induction progress variable or reaction progress variable. They're tracking this real species, and so that give you the framework to import it to get this input from NASA polynomial for some more realistic way to model the thermodynamic properties. I guess that's one of the advantages.
It actually tracks these packets itself, not the individual species, but yeah, it does track the packet itself. So it changes everything accordingly. But yeah, I guess it does answer your question, yeah, it does help in that case, that it actually gives you the correct specific heat as the temperature changes. So gamma, no, is not constant.
Okay, okay.
Everything is kind of designed to replicate the full mechanism a little better.
Okay, I see. Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, I think there's another question. I'm just going to read. It's from Steve Armstrong. The pressure you tested was relatively low. How good will the model work? How good will the model work when dealing with high pressure? In detailed model, there might be some pressure dependent reactions. Oh, is this actually from Dr. Lee Song Shi? I think yeah, he's asking the question through this different name. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So over here, I just showed 10 kilopascals, but in the paper, if you go and review it, it's done for like 100 kilopascals and higher, and it just gives you the same results. Over here, I just picked one pressure case just to kind of get the message across, but it does as well at higher pressures, and I can link you to Dr. Zhu's paper or my conference paper, which actually goes through processes at higher pressures.
Okay, great. Thank you. And
hi, Xiaosheng, if I may.
yeah, sure.
Sorry to go back to the previous questions, but I'm still not quite sure how you're following or changing the gamma. Do you follow a single species polynomial, or are you looking at the mixture? I think you showed it a bit in the reaction mechanism with your packets.
Oh yeah. So I kind of follow the procedure highlighted in Dr. Shepard's paper, where he goes through like the CND modeling, and he actually has a function over there that describes this like thermicity and the specific heats for a mixture. So essentially, I calculate the specific heats individually for each of those product species. So okay, I have product species, and based on these, I can get the NASA polynomials from the mechanism for these product species. And then using those NASA polynomials, I can get the specific heats for each of these species, and then combine them into the specific heat for the full mixture, if that makes sense.
So it's like a blend of 4 polynomials, one for your...
Yes, yeah, yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I mean, it would essentially be only 3 because R0 and R1 are just chemically identical. So it's just a reactant, and these 2 product groups have their own like NASA polynomial set, and using those, I can get the specific heat of the mixture at a given temperature.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so Shem, I can add to this. So in Cantera and Temkin and everything, you got these polynomials for each individual species. Well, it turns out you can just add the coefficients together for each pack, and it's very easy, right? Isn't this right, Mohnish? You can just add them together, right? So if you have like the coefficients for everything.
Yeah, you can simply just
coefficient for CH4 and a coefficient for O2, but because they're in a pack together, you can just add the coefficients and then
you multiply them with like the mole fraction. Yeah.
Right, so you weigh them by how much of that species you have, and that's as simple as just adding them together.
Yeah, exactly. That's all it is. Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, there is an additional question from Professor Chen Zhang. His question is one more question on the result of slide number 14. Why does the burned gas have nearly the same temperature for different initial temperatures of 1500, 2000, and 3000?
Yeah, I don't exactly have an answer for that. I just ran the full chemistry solution, and I guess it kind of equilibrates to somewhere in that temperature range, which is why it's very similar. But yeah, I don't know why it's so close exactly.
I mean, it's constant pressure, right? Like normally, like in a constant volume process, your pressure would go up, and so your temperature would go up and stay up. But in this case, you know, I guess everything combusts and then needs to equilibrate. And since your pressure is not going up, then you kind of would expect your final temperature to be close to your initial. There's a bit of an increase. But.
Does Professor Chen has his own explanation, or he want to have a comment on this?
No, I don't know why.
Okay.
That's curious.
Yeah.
If you increase the initial temperature, the blended gas temperature should increase, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it increases marginally, but the pressure is not changing, right? So.
But for this case, the pressure is constant, right? It's a constant pressure case.
Yes.
Yeah. But we don't know for sure. I mean, we just ran it, you know.
What is the equilibrium ratio for example? This is Mason air, right? Mason air, Mason oxygen. What's the mixture?
Oh, this is just stoichiometric oxygen fuel combustion.
Mason oxygen stoichiometric.
Yeah,
Okay.
yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Not air. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Is there any other questions from the audience? Yeah, I think these are very great questions and very interesting talk from Mohnish. I think this like we all get some useful informations, and I hope Mohnish also get some good comments or inspirations from the audience comments, right? Yeah, I wonder maybe if there is a way that we can. Yeah, I just see like Professor Maxwell posted the. I guess this is the link to the conference paper, right, on ResearchGate.
Yeah, that's correct. We're working on a full publication now.
Okay. Right.
So hopefully we'll submit that soon. But in the meantime, we have this conference paper, which will be presented next month. But I mean, you guys got a better presentation now, anyway. So. But if you would like more information, you know, there at least we have the preliminary results there.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. I think this is definitely a very interesting way. You know, it's very impressive that although I'm not sure, like I fully get the details of how this gamma is implemented, but I like to learn more about this, and I guess this is a great way to you know, to do this you know, like high fidelity modeling of detonation, because I think like in total there are 4 progress variables to track, right, for this or 3
species. Yeah, there'd be 4 different
4
species to track. Yeah.
Okay, so this is not a very significant you know, increase in computational cost than, you know, 1 or 2 or 3 steps computation. Just is still like way computationally way cheaper than detailed chemistry. And if I think a long term problem with this reduced order problem is it cannot capture the ZND profile very well. And the main hypothesis has been going on over the years is the failure to capture a right gamma, right? Like they just use a constant gamma. I think if you can, in your model, seems like you demonstrated you circumvent this problem and having a temperature dependent gamma. I think this is going to be very useful for this community, and we like to learn more and see your future work on this. Yeah. Thank you very much for the talk, and
thank you.
Yeah, if you guys have any further questions, please contact Mohnish or Professor Brian Maxwell by email or through you know, ResearchGate. There are also this chatting tools over there, and yeah, we will edit the video and also the previous lecture given by Dr. Chang Xiao as well. So we will post this to YouTube and other video channels soon, and we will let you know. And yeah, I think that today we have a very great talk, and yeah, in 2 weeks we're gonna have another talk. Whether it's gonna be on Monday or not, I need to confirm with our next speaker, Dr. Xian Shi from Stanford University. And once we confirm the time, we will make the announcement to our community. And yeah, next time we will have a better experience with with Zoom and all this teleconferencing technologies, and we try to make the talk go more smoothly. And this time, thank you very much, Mohnish, for your excellent talk, and thank you all for attending today's meeting, and hope to see you all in our future events. Is there anything else to add from you, Mohnish?
Oh,
it's fine.
no, I just want, yeah, thank you. I appreciate
Okay.
the opportunity. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. Hope to be in touch with all of you, and see you all in our upcoming events. Thank you. Have a good day. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye bye.